Welcome to part 2 of the Pathfinder 2nd edition release 18 update video. In this video I'm going to cover the automation that has been introduced in this release. Prior to this release there was a basic level of automation that was detailed in the wiki on the Fantasy Grounds website that could do some certain levels of automation. Really, that was just the first experimental piece of that. Now in release 18 it's been expanded a lot, and also in line working with SmiteWorks we're looking to provide a more generic framework that hopefully can be migrated to other rule sets as well. So the way this works is that there's been a field called automation added to a number of key records within the rule set, records that primarily are added to a character sheet. And this is when you create one of those records, or if you're editing one of those records, right down the bottom there's a field called automation. Now normally when you first load up a campaign that field isn't visible. You need to actually enable it within the campaign options. It being visible or invisible does not affect the automation process of the automation actually working. It's just whether you see it when you open a record or not. So normally when you first create a campaign, the show ability automation field down the bottom under the experimental development will be set to off. And what that means is that when you actually open a record, you won't see automation right down the bottom there. There's another couple of options. One of them is on. That means that you'll actually see automation when you're editing a record, and also when the record's actually locked. And the third one is edit only, that you only see it when the record's open, but when you actually close it you don't see that automation. So for demonstration purposes here I'm going to set this to on, so that all the time you can actually see if there's any automation data. You'll actually see it in a record when it's opened. As well, there's within the system you can tell if there's a record that actually has some automation associated with it. You'll see this little A next to the record there that you can that basically means that when you add this record to a character, there is some automation that's going to be applied to that actual character. So as an example, I'm just going to show toughness here, and what this does is this applies +1 to the HP misc per level entry, which would actually be this miscellaneous per level HP modifier there, so that when I add this field it's going to actually add that data. I'll come back to toughness a little bit later when I actually go through the process of what happens when you apply a record with automation. The other records that actually contain any automation are the features that actually get populated when you add a class or a class level to your character. You can see here some of these have automation applied with them already. We're slowly working through adding automation to all of the fields in the base data. That for test we're trying to populate most of the level 1 fields, and then we'll expand that out during the test process and beyond that. So class features have automation applied as well. Lookup data, so things like the class abilities like a druidic order, cloistered cleric. When you add an entry, when you select a druidic order, there's various pieces of automation that actually get applied as part of that, as well as some of the features as well. And also for some items, there's some items that actually have automation effects associated with them. Not all at the moment, because a lot of these are actually edge cases, but things like torches have automation associated with them, such as to show the lighting effect available in FGU, that when you equip a torch. So basically this automation gets triggered when we actually add that record to our character sheet, be it as part of dragging in a class and class features getting automatically added, selecting a class option such as a druidic order, rogue racket, sorcerer's bloodline, something like that. This any automation associated with that record will be processed. Now, I can't stress this highly enough. Whenever you're doing any operations against a PC, when you're adding records to a PC, I really, really recommend that you open the combat tracker and review the data that's being presented in the tracker log window here. Getting used to this with the first time you use it can be a little bit strange because the data is populated bottom to top. So the most recent information is at the top of this entry here, and the first thing that the first thing was way down here when I added dwarf to this test character. The reason for that is that this window here in Fantasy Grounds, when you add new data to it, it does not scroll down to the bottom, and you can't do that programmatically. So in order to keep the data up front and center and in your face and available to you without you having to scroll, it's populated at the top of this window. Anything new that you do is populated and displayed in this window. And especially now with Release 18, with more and more automation being added to records, you need to know, has there been automation added, or do I need to do something manually myself? So it is very, very important that you open this tracker window when you're really adding anything to the character sheet. You can see as well in this release there's now an add a level button, which will apply the level of the class that you previously added to this character. So this is a linked record here, this cleric character class. If I click, normally prior to release 18 you drag a link from the character class and drop it on your character sheet or in the combat tracker. Now you just click add level and it's going to use that record, that linked record in there to add a new level to you. So now that process should be a little bit smoother than it was before. So an example of automation is the toughness feat. So this is a first level feat that it's a general feat, as you can see from the traits here. Just double click on that to get an idea of what the general feat actually means. And this means that you basically get an extra 1 hit point per level. DC of recovery checks, that isn't automated in this at this point because that's not available in the rule set yet. Hopefully in a future release that automation of recovery checks will be included as well. So at the moment the automation we're going to apply when we add the toughness feat to our character is +1 to the HP miscellaneous per level field. So all I have to do is just drag and drop that either on my character or in the charge end tracker, and you'll see a couple of things here. It says toughness, automation entry applied, automation data. It tells you what that automation data is. Now this will only appear if you have this automation field set to on. If that's set to off, you won't get that data just appearing there. It'll just say, toughness feat feat toughness added to tester, that's the name of this character, automation has been applied. If there's not automation associated with that feat, then it will give you a different message. It'll tell you that something needs to be applied manually. I'll just add something that doesn't have automation currently, and it tells you that no automation applied. Check the entry and manually apply if needed. So in those cases, you'd normally come here, you'd open this and say, your visual senses improved, granting you dark vision. I mean, that's something that I can very easily add, and I will be going through these types of entries and adding in dark vision in the future. But that's just an example of look at something. I mean, the fact that there wasn't an A there will give you a bit of a clue, but some things can't be automated, and this is just telling you, hey, no automation's been applied. You'll need to cater for that manually either now, make the relevant change now, or manually during your game. So when you add a record that has some automation with it, it's going to add it down here for things related to your ancestry and background. It's going to add things here for things related to your class, and then feats will be added here. Notice when we added the toughness feat, because automation has been applied, it's put a little plus to the left there, and that means that this is a modifier that has been applied. So if we remove that feat, it's going to reverse that modifier. Sometimes there'll be an equal sign there, which means we just set kind of a hard value on there. So when we remove that, we can't necessarily roll back to what we were before, because one, the system doesn't remember what it was before, and secondly, it could be that there's been something else that has changed that value since you added this original feat or feature or something else, and so removing it, we can't roll back to something that we don't really know what we should be applying to. But something with a plus next to it, we know that that's just a modifier. So what we've actually done is we've added +1 per level to this miscellaneous modifier field. If something else changes that, it might increase it, it might decrease it, but our +1 will always stay there. So when we remove a toughness feat, we can take that one off. So notice, so currently I'll just leave that open so we can see what happens when we actually remove that feat. We've got 22 hit points. If I go to my abilities and if I remove that toughness feat, always good to have a look in the charge end tracker as well. So because I have show automation set to 1, it tells me that toughness automation entry removed, tells me what the data is, and then it tells me that this ability feature feat toughness was removed from tester, original automation data was reversed. So the system has some little checks in there to tell you if it successfully reversed that or not. You can see our miscellaneous bonus per level has gone from 1 to 0, and our hit points have dropped to 21. So that's quite a good little feature there for some of these feats. Don't intend to make everything within the rule set that if you apply it and you take it off, it's going to automatically roll that back. One, for the reasons I mentioned before, some things you don't know what you need to roll back to, and two, I'd rather add a lot more functionality in the rule set than spend time basically trying to make a character generator. But certainly this automation to certain levels, you add something, it applies the automation, checking the charge end tracker, you can see that field's changed from 0 to 1. And if you remove that automation, you can see the field changes and the charge end tracker tells you actually what's going on. So there's a lot of different types of automation available. Currently, this is detailed on the Fantasy Grounds Pathfinder 2 forum. There's a sticky thread mentioned on Release 18 testing. If we scroll down to the automation page, which I'll be adding in which I'll add in this video once I've completed it, and add in various information here. There's a work in progress reference document that describes this PC automation feature, how to turn it on, off, how to edit the various automation field data, because you can have multiple. I'll just make a copy of this record so I can actually edit it. You can have multiple entries within this automation field with all of them actually contained within square brackets. So you can keep having multiple entries within there. So as an example, I've just going to added 15 to the ancestry HP, which is this first field. If I add that in there, then you can see the ancestry has been set to 15. Now this is an example of something that can't be revoked because something else might have changed that base ancestry entry. So there's an equal sign there. So when we remove this, it's going to remove the things that it can. So it removes the +1 per level. But it doesn't actually tell you that the automation data has been reversed. I need to add a message in there that adds a little bit more details to say that not all automation was reversed. But that just shows you that some things can and some things can't actually be reversed. It also shows you that you can string together automation. Automation is applied in step from the first one, the second one, the third one within this actual automation entry. And so there are a lot of different action keywords that we actually use within these automation fields, and these are being expanded on all the time. There's things like you can type in, fortitude, reflex, ref, will. You can add a skill like acrobatics, athletics, so you can say acrobatics trained, fortitude expert. You can just type all of those in. Again, one each between the square brackets. You can set a character speed modification. You can set bulk. So an example of these are the fleet-footed, feet that add speed, and the heavy hauler that adjusts your is it called heavy hauler? Can't remember what it's called now. Hefty hauler that adjusts the bulk limit that you can actually carry. That would change this bulk adjustment here. So we can just see that when we add the hefty hauler feet to this character, it changes that bulk adjustment, which means there's no penalty and the limit can actually change. We see that in here it's a plus, so when we remove it, it's going to reverse that data, and our limits go back down. Senses, we can add a sense, like dark vision. So this is where I should use this for that previous feat that I showed you. We can add traits, HP. We can add a feat. We can add a spell. We can add a spell class. We can add a skill that's similar to this previous one, but this one only works on recognized skills, the standard skills. This one could be used for custom skills like specific lore skills. We can set our defenses, our defense proficiencies, our attack proficiencies, save proficiencies. We can present a choice like you get with your class features. We can add an effect. We can add a message, actually display a specific message in the charge end tracker, or we have none, which basically says, hey, there's actually no automation to apply for this. And none just means that we don't display the message in here saying that there's, check entry and it manually applied if needed. If we tag something as none, it means it's really just for information, and we don't display that message because there's no automation that can be manually applied. So this is a work in progress document, but it does include data saying whether removal is supported for those types of data. It gives you some examples as well. And we scroll down here, tells you what's available. I've got some basic information here. This is basically just copying the comments out of the code that I've written, and I'll expand these out to have full data available to give examples of what's available to actually use that. As usual, look for examples in the system, especially as we progress through the test. As more and more automation gets added to the various records, you'll see more data available in here. So it scrolls through and gives you quite a lot of information. And then there's kind of some default actual processing about it down there. And that data needs updating down there. So this just gives you an idea of all of the entries that are actually available and will be expanded upon as we go through the test of the system. So what I'd like to do is just show you a couple of examples of how this is actually done based off actually automating some class features. One, I'm just going to show you a simple class feature. One, I'm going to show you quite a complex example. So I'm going to go through creating a new character. I'm going to create a dwarf here. So I'm going to create an ancestry. So I'm just going to drag and drop the dwarf ancestry onto there. We can review the various ancestry heritages available to this dwarf. The uncommon heritages are listed down the bottom. The various available heritages across all the sources that I've currently got open. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add Forge Dwarf because that's got a nice little bit of automation in it that I can demonstrate how effects work on a character. So I'm going to select Forge Dwarf there and apply that. So here it's going to tell me Ancestry Heritage Forge Dwarf added to Dwarfy. It says it's adding some automation to do with the Dwarf Feature 1. It's added a character effect, which I'll talk about in a moment. It's added Forge Dwarf Feature 2, no automation's been applied, and then it's just put a bit of a bold item up here as well. 3+ is saying, hey, you might need to do something just to check this out, and it says some of the automation may or may not have been applied as part of adding the dwarf there. What am I going to select as my? We'll select strength as my boost for being a dwarf. So we just come here, we added the Forged Dwarf, Heritage Forged Dwarf has been added here. And there's a couple of features. Feature 1 applied this effect here. It says grants you fire resistance equal to half your level. I'll come back to this in a moment. The second one that we need to review, it says you treat environmental heat effects as if they were one step less extreme. Incredible heat becomes extreme, things like that. I mean, that's probably never going to be automated in the rule set, so that's why this was flagging up, hey, we've added something that you're probably going to have to handle manually in game. But what happens with this dwarf feature here? We have an effect. So this is going to add an effect as when this feature is applied. It's a character type effect. So this means this effect is going to be added to the character. And what it's going to do, it's going to add resist : then H LVL M1 in curly brackets fire. So the first thing that we need to go through is that if it's a character effect, what happens is that effect is added to the character effects section of the combat tab. Now this is new in release 18. This is a way of adding effects immediately to the character, and these are processed whenever whenever this character rolls an action, or whenever somebody targets this character, in the case of defensive effects, and these are incorporated into the effects that are on the combat tracker as well. You won't see them in there because they're actually just kept separate, just to minimize the amount of effects that display in the combat tracker, because that's really going to be used for transient effects that have a duration. If anything has more permanent effects, or things that the player controls a little bit easier, they're going to be in this character effects window here. And that's especially true for this example. This is a heritage feature, so this is something that's based to this actual character, to this dwarf ancestry. So this is something that's going to be on all the time. I mean, if something needs to remove it, you can just switch it off here with the buttons, or you can just, but normally it will actually be on. Now, when we apply this, it applies this character effect. There's a link within the character effects to see, hey, what's applied that. It's given the name of this feature. And if we actually want to see the effect, we can open up that individual effect. If we have lots of effects, we can use this detail button to show all of the effects applied at that point in time. And it's got this kind of slightly strange code in here. Basically, HLVL means half level, M1 means minimum 1, which is using this. And this will all be documented, just going through adding all this documentation into the system. But this in curly brackets is something that will be dynamically calculated when that effect is needed. So in this case, it's a resistance effect. So when somebody applies damage to this character, this will be evaluated at runtime based off the current level of the dwarf. So we can actually see what that value will currently be calculated to by hovering over the title, the name of this actual character effect here. Just hover over that and it's going to calculate that value for you. So we can see that currently this character has resist 1 fire applied to them. And so this can be quite a powerful feature that as the characters change. So if I'll just kind of cheat. We don't have a level on it yet, so I'll show you that later when I actually add a level. But this is quite a powerful feature that allows you to apply something once, and then it's going to adjust as things change, such as if somebody's dexterity changes or something like that, we can put, in curly brackets dex or something like that. So other versions of effects that we have is item and use. So a good example of an item is this torch. That is basically, this means when this is equipped, this effect is going to be applied. So I'm going to add the torch to my character sheet. Sorry, I need to go to the inventory tab to add that in there. You can see it starts as being carried. We don't have any effect on the character sheet, but as soon as I equip that carried, the system's going to look at the automation. Oh, there's an item effect on here. Apply this effect to the character, and we can see we have this now. This effect has been applied. Again, there's a link to the base record that applied it, and you can see that 25 torches available. So that means when this character is put on a map with lighting, it's going to use that lighting effect, just as if that effect was actually on that character within the combat tracker. You can hide all effects, to show individual ones, so you can see that data quite quickly. And like I say, you can also hover over the title to see what the actual effect is. When we remove that effect and either drop it or just move it to carried, that effect is removed from the character. Note that this specifically doesn't show any data in the charge end tracker here, because ultimately we're not changing the character, we're just equipping or unequipping items, so it's not going to show that in the charge end tracker. So don't be concerned. Oh, my automation hasn't been applied because it hasn't been noted in the combat tracker. But this is just for item effects. There's also a third type of effect that is primarily attached to weapons, and this is called item. So I just have a simple effect example here attached to a longsword effect. Sorry, it's not called item, it's called use, because it's an effect that will trigger when the item is used, when the weapon's used. So we've got an effect here, it's called use, and it's attack to item. So when I add this item to this character, what it's going to do is when it creates the action record for that, it's going to create an effect with that use effect within there. And this is an effect that will only actually be triggered when this item's used. So when I do an attack, we should get a +2 effect applied to this longsword, purely because it's an attack with the use item with that effect. You can see that it's not been applied to this clan dagger because it's not actually on there. Good attack with the clan dagger. So this is just a quick way of kind of adding effects to weapons in the items entry, and when you drag and drop it in, it creates these effects here within the weapon details, and they can be applied to the actions. Really, this just currently supports attack and damage effects that would be applied to the various, an attack action or a damage action from here, but they will be expanded on in future. And of course, you can add additional effects if you want to in here manually once you've added an entry to your to the actions tab in here. Weapons also support the item automation, so I'm just going to do a very, very quick thing here. Maybe this item is flaming, so when you actually equip it, it gives off a flame, something like that, just an example. So this is going to be when this longsword's equipped, it's going to add that effect to the character sheet. So just because I've just changed it there, I need to cycle through the entries here. So when I equip that longsword, we can now see that we have longsword, light, torch as being applied there. So you can actually cycle through things that actually apply an item effect and a use effect all within the same entry, because each individual piece of automation is treated the same. So I know this has been quite a long video. We're nearly up to 30 minutes already. The final thing I just want to show you, if you're still with me, is a complex example of stringing a lot of different pieces of automation together. I'm just going to quickly add a background to this character. They're going to be a druid, so I don't know what I'm going to add. You can see now there's a source column applied here, so you can actually see where records come from. Currently that's only on feats and backgrounds, but it will be added to other record types as well in the future. I think hermit's quite good for a druid, somebody who just lives out in the wild. Add constitution, nature we're going to add when we add the druid, and we'll need wisdom for that druid there. So now we're going to add a level of druid. So let's just see what's going to happen when we add this level. The various entries are going to be added there, and we can see that there's some automation available. One of them is anathema, which is just going to add some information that's anathema to this druid. We've got an automation of none in there because essentially there's no automation applied to this. This is for information, so when this gets applied, it won't say you need to apply automation for this feature because there's none that you can actually apply. So that's just an example of none being applied. There's a choice of druidic order here. So this is one of those automation entries that is detailed within this, that tells you that you can actually tell it what to actually choose. So this is choice. It's of lookup data. This is always lookup data at the moment. Class druid, druidic order. So basically we have a lot of entries down here in the lookup data. We have class druid. So we have type class, category druid, subcategory druidic order. So what this is going to do is it's going to list when we apply that feature, it's going to pop up a choice window, and it's going to have these 4 actual entries in there for us to make a selection to actually set that up. There's also a Druidic order here, and that's going to add the focus spell class that you get as part of the Druidic order. So this is going to automatically create that focus spell class for us. And then within these orders, there's multiple pieces of automation here. So the animal order, we get trained in athletics. We get the animal companion feat, so we're using feat add, and we add a spell, heal animal, to the focus spells entry. So because even though this automation, is listed in that order, because we have a choice, that essentially everything else will be applied while we're waiting for the choice window. The choice window pops up and we make a decision. So this Druidic order will already have made that focus spells for us, and it's going to be called focus spells. And so we're going to add this heal animal spell to the focus spells list. Again, this is documented within the actual within the document here. So when we add a spell, where is it? Spell, we have the spell name, then a pipe, then the spell class name, then a pipe, then the spell class level, if we need to put it in a specific level. That's optional. If it's not provided, it will just use the spell level. But pretty much for focus spells, we just have one slot, level 1, that gets heightened with the level of the character. So basically, now, when we add this class of Druid, we're going to get Anathema added, we're going to get the Druidic order added, language and shield block and things are going to be added as well. Primal spellcasting, wild empathy, they're all going to be added. And then we're going to get a choice to select our Druidic order. So let's just go through all of this. Just close some of those windows now. So, I'm going to add a Druid. So, select Druidic order, I'll just move that off to the side so we can just see what's all happening here. So normally we will put a line across here when something major happens, like adding a class. So at first level, a lot of things happen. Note now that we're adding attack and attack proficiencies as well in Release 18. Stuff that's in red is what you have to do, so you need to trade in one skill determined by your Druidic order. We train in a couple of skills. Shield block's been added, so it's actually added shield block. It's popped up the choice. It's added Anathema, so there you go, or Anathema, depending on how you pronounce it. I don't know how you pronounce it correctly. It's created focus spells for us. So down here now there's a focus spell entry with focus maximum there. It's created the Druid spell casting entry as well. So we're all kind of ready to do other things here. So now we have this Druidic order that has these various pieces of automation attached to it. We'll get some more Anathema based off the order that we select, and we're also going to train in athletics. So let's have a look. We're currently not trained in athletics. We're going to get an animal companion feat, and we're going to get the heal animal focus spell. So I'll select animal order, I'll apply that, and the system goes through, and so it's going down here. We've added the Druidic order class feature animal order, athletics proficiency has been trained. There we go, it's changed to trained. We've added the animal companion feat. There's the animal companion feat. Notice that it says, no automation applied, check entry and manually apply if necessary. That's referring to this feat itself. So we're going to have to set up our animal companion ourselves. And then it's added the heal animal spell, and also the Anathema has an entry of none in there. So we've got the Anathema that's related to a Druid, and we've got our animal order Anathema as well. So that's just saying that it's been applied correctly. So if we go down to our Actions tab, we can see that Heal Animal has been added in there. So we have our full-on Heal Animal spell, and you notice that in Release 18 spells come with actions attached to them, the default actions attached to them, so that as this character and these gets applied into here, so that as this spell levels up, actually it doesn't have the modifier, that's something I need to add in there, but now these actions should be better parsed out because they've actually been hard-coded already, if they actually have been hard-coded in the spell entry. And we can actually see that if I go to Heal Animal over here. So yeah, we can just see heal animal has those entries actually, hard-coded in there so that they pass out correctly when that spell's added to the character. There's obviously a lot involved with this. I've spoken for 35 minutes about it, and there's a lot more going on, and this will be expanded and added to more entries. So if you're still listening, thanks very much for watching, and please, if you can, do some testing for me in the test channel. We're hoping to get this into the actual live channel in 2 or 3 weeks' time. So thanks again for watching, and hope you enjoy it. Thanks. Goodbye.